It started out like any ordinary evening. The kind of quiet, slow-burning comfort that fills a house when you've lived in it for decades. I was in my kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile floor, the kettle humming behind me, and the scent of mint tea just beginning to rise. That night wasn't supposed to mean anything. But sometimes the smallest moments change how you see everything and everyone. My nephew came by to drop off something for his mother. Or at least that's what he said. And the way he looked at me as I turned from the stove, that moment still echoes inside me. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Is it a cozy corner in Texas? A front porch in Ohio? A quiet night in Oregon? Let me know in the comments. I'd love seeing all the places you join me from. Now let me take you back to that night. The night I made tea and couldn't move. The kitchen was dimly lit. Just the warm light over the stove casting a soft glow on the tiled backsplash. I was humming something without really knowing what it was. Probably one of those old songs that never leaves you. Not even after years of silence. The air smelled of lemon balm, and I had just placed the monks on the counter when I heard the knock at the side door. It was gentle, almost unsure. When I opened it, there he was. Ethan, my sister's boy, 26, tall and lean, with that kind of quiet charm that made him seem older than he was. He smiled, brushing some late summer rain from his hair. "Hey, Aunt Hannah. Mom left her scarf in my car. Thought I'd drop it off on the way home." I stepped aside, waving him in. "You didn't have to drive all the way out here for that, Ethan. She'll live without it for a day." He grinned, handing it to me. "Yeah, but she said it's her favorite. Figured I'd earn some points." I chuckled. "Well, sit down for a minute. Tea's just about ready." He followed me into the kitchen, pulling out one of the old wooden chairs at the table. He didn't speak much at first, just watched me as I poured the steaming water into the mugs and dropped in the tea bags. There was something unusually quiet about him. He was always polite, always warm, but that night his silence was heavier, more aware. I could feel his eyes on me in that soft way some people look when they're lost in thought. I handed him the cup and sat across from him. He thanked me, wrapping his hands around the warmth like it meant more than just tea. So I asked, trying to lighten the air, "How's work? Still with that architecture firm?" He nodded. "Yeah, still there. Long hours, but I like it." There was a pause before he added, "It's just strange sometimes feeling like you're building places for people you'll never meet. Like pouring yourself into something that exists without ever knowing if it matters." I tilted my head, surprised by the depth in his voice. "You've always been thoughtful, Ethan. That's a gift, not a burden." He looked up at me, his eyes warm and quiet, but something else flickered there. Something unsure, something unspoken. "I think I get that from you," he said. My breath caught just slightly. I smiled, brushing it off. "Flattery won't get you out of helping with the dishes." We both laughed, and the moment softened. But as I stood to carry the cups back to the sink, I felt him behind me. Close. Not so close that it startled me, but close enough that I noticed. Close enough that I stopped. The sound of the kettle still hissed softly in the background. My hands hovered above the sink, unsure of where to go. I didn't turn right away. I didn't know if I should. Then gently, quietly he spoke, his voice low. "You always smell like cinnamon and flowers," he said. "Even when I was a kid, I remember it." I turned then slowly and found his eyes meeting mine in that quiet, vulnerable way people look when they're holding back something they're not sure should ever be said out loud. My voice felt caught in my throat, but I found it. "Ethan." He stepped back just an inch, enough to show me he wasn't trying to cross a line I wasn't willing to name. "Sorry, that came out weird, didn't it?" "No," I said, "just unexpected." We stood there for a moment that felt like it lasted a year. The silence was filled with everything unspoken. Not heavy, not dangerous, just delicate. Then I reached past him to turn off the kettle. "Tea's getting cold," I murmured. He smiled again. Not sheepish, not guilty, just soft. "Maybe I'll stay for one more cup if that's all right." And I nodded, even as something inside me shifted, something small. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. But I knew as I poured the water again that the moment he had stepped closer, something in me had stopped. Not in fear, not in confusion, just stillness. And sometimes that's where everything begins. The second cup of tea went untouched for a while. Ethan sat back in his chair, fingers drumming lightly along the side of the mug, while I busied myself with anything I could, wiping a perfectly clean countertop, adjusting the salt shaker, pretending not to feel the air between us thick and new. The kitchen, my kitchen, where I had made 1,000 quiet cups of tea and hummed through the silence, suddenly felt smaller, not uncomfortable, just more alive. So I said, finally breaking the silence, "You staying with your mom tonight?" He shook his head. "No, I've got a room at the inn near the old post office. Figured it was too late to make the drive back to the city." I gave a little nod, pretending not to feel a twist of something. Guilt? Curiosity? I couldn't tell. "That place still smells like balls and dust," I said with a smirk. He chuckled. "Probably. But I don't mind. I like old places, places with stories." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time noticed how much he'd grown into himself. The boy I remembered, all elbows and 2 long limbs, had disappeared somewhere along the way. What sat across from me now was a man, a thoughtful, self-contained, quietly observant man. And he wasn't just visiting his aunt anymore. He was seeing me, really seeing me, and I didn't know what to do with that. "Well," I said, clearing my throat, "at least it's got a decent mattress. You'll sleep well." He smiled softly. "Maybe, but I'm not tired yet." There was that pause again, the kind that hums beneath the surface. I looked away back toward the stove, even though nothing needed tending. My hands felt restless. My heart too. "You want something sweet?" I asked. "I've got lemon cake from yesterday." "Sure," he said, standing before I could stop him. "I'll help." I turned just as he reached the counter. We were face to face again, closer than before. My breath caught slightly and I hated how obvious it felt. But he didn't pull back. Didn't look away. His eyes searched mine, not in a probing way, but in a waiting one, as though he wasn't going to speak unless I gave him permission. "You okay?" he asked gently. It was a simple question, but it hit me deeper than it should have, because the truth was I hadn't been asked that sincerely in quite some time. Not since my divorce 5 years ago. Not since the house quieted, and holidays became shorter visits and fewer calls. I swallowed. "I'm fine." He nodded like he didn't believe me but wouldn't press. "I've always liked talking with you," he said. "Even when I was a kid, you listened better than anyone." That warmth spread through my chest, strange and comforting at once. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means a lot." For a few seconds we just stood there side by side, the smell of tea and cake between us. And then I reached up to grab the cake tin, only to find his hand had done the same. Our fingers brushed and the tin slipped a little before we both caught it at once. That small touch sent a flicker of something through me I didn't expect. My skin buzzed where we touched. My cheeks flushed before I could stop them. I laughed nervously. "Well, that was graceful," I said. He didn't laugh. Not quite. He just looked down at our hands. "You're shaking." I pulled away gently, setting the cake down. "I'm not used to whatever this is." "Neither am I," he admitted. "But it doesn't feel wrong." That stunned me. Not because it was bold, but because it was honest. I sat down slowly, needing a moment. He did too. We cut the cake in silence, and he passed me a slice like it was the most normal thing in the world. But every movement now had weight. Every glance, every moment our fingers almost brushed again. It all felt new and charged and delicate. "I think I've been lonely," I said suddenly, not even sure why. He looked up. "Me too." We didn't need to say more. We just sat with it, that quiet confession suspended between us, soaking into the evening like the scent of tea leaves and lemon. When it was finally time for him to leave, I walked him to the door. The rain had stopped, but the night air was cool and damp. He paused in the doorway, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders slightly hunched like he wanted to say something, but wasn't sure he should. "I like tonight," he said softly, "more than I probably should." I met his gaze, the wind brushing past us. "I know." He leaned forward just enough to press a gentle kiss to my cheek, respectful, light, but lingering. When he pulled back, he didn't look away. "Good night, Aunt Hannah." "Good night, Ethan," I whispered. And I closed the door slowly, heart thickening in my chest, hands trembling just a little. Not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in years I felt something I thought I'd buried, a pull, a spark, a quiet awakening I didn't yet understand. And I stood there in my robe and slippers, the house silent around me, unable to move. The next morning I awoke early, not because I had anywhere to be. Retired life had its own rhythm, but because I hadn't really slept. My mind was still wrapped around the quiet storm of the night before. I kept replaying the way Ethan had looked at me, the feel of his hand brushing mine, the sound of his voice when he said it didn't feel wrong. I wasn't sure what troubled me more, how unexpected it had been, or how much a part of me had leaned into it. I made my way downstairs in my robe, the house still dark and quiet. My slippers whispered across the wooden floor as I went to the kitchen, instinctively reaching for the kettle again. Tea had become a comfort, something to hold when my hands didn't know what else to do. As the water heated, I opened the back door and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, and the garden looked refreshed from the rain. I stood there in the doorway, sipping slowly, trying to reason with the part of me that felt awake. I told myself it was nothing, a moment of confusion, emotional vulnerability. A boy, no, a man just trying to feel close to someone. That's all. But then my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Ethan. If you're up early, want to get breakfast before I head out? I stare at it for a moment, unsure if replying would be an invitation or a mistake. Then I typed back before I could overthink it. Sure. The diner near the lake. Perfect. 30 minutes. I didn't answer, just closed the phone and headed upstairs to get dressed. I chose a soft sweater, light gray, hand jeans, something comfortable but put together. I brushed my hair back, added a bit of color to my cheeks, and stared at myself in the mirror for longer than usual. I was 62. I had lines around my eyes, soft curves where once there was tension, and the quiet wisdom of a woman who had lived through love, loss, and years of quiet in between. But in that moment, I felt something almost electric beneath it all. Like life hadn't stopped unfolding after all. I arrived first at the diner, tucked into a corner booth by the window. It was mostly empty, just the usual early risers, and the smell of butter and coffee thick in the air. I was stirring cream into my cup when he walked in. Ethan wore a dark blue pullover and jeans, his hair still damp from the shower, eyes warm and alert. He smiled when he saw me like he'd been waiting for this. I was afraid you'd change your mind, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I almost did, I admitted. But then I thought, why should I? He didn't press, just smiled and reached for a menu. We ordered eggs and toast for him, oatmeal and berries for me, and talked about everything and nothing. But even in the lightness of our conversation, there was something simmering underneath. An awareness, a pull. And then somewhere between refills of coffee and small talk about his latest project, he sensed something that stopped me. I think I've always been drawn to you, he said, his voice low. Even when I was younger, I didn't know what it meant then, but it was always there. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. Ethan. I know, he said quickly. It's strange. It's not supposed to be said out loud, but I can't pretend it isn't real. I set the spoon down and exhaled slowly. You're not a boy anymore. I can't see you that way now, no matter how hard I try. I don't want you to, he said. I want you to see me now as I am, not as your sister's son. The weight of his words sank deep into me. They weren't careless or impulsive. They came from somewhere deeper. A well of quiet truths that had been growing beneath the surface. I looked at him across the table, a man with kind eyes, steady hands, and an honesty that disarmed me more than anything else. I don't know what to do with this, I said honestly. You don't have to do anything, he replied. Just needed you to know. That's all. We sat in silence for a while after that, the den of plates and silverware around us filling the quiet. There was no rush, no urgency, just the truth, sitting there between us like a third presence in the booth. When we walked outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting light across the damp pavement. I turned to say goodbye, but he hesitated. I don't have to go back yet, he said. Not right away. I didn't answer right away. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. Then come walk with me. The lake trail's just across the road. He smiled and nodded. I'd like that. So we walked slowly side by side, the gravel crunching beneath our feet. The water sparkled, the breeze carried hints of pine and wild flowers, and for the first time in years, I felt like someone was walking beside me. Not out of duty but choice. At one point he reached out, his fingers brushing the back of my hand, not grabbing, not forcing, just there waiting. And I didn't pull away. Because sometimes the most unexpected moments hold the kind of quiet truth you didn't even know you were missing. And I was tired of missing. We walked longer than I thought we would. The path curved along the lake, its surface glinting in the late morning sun, calm and undisturbed. Trees rustled gently above us, casting shifting shadows across the trail. Neither of us said much, and we didn't have to. There was something strangely peaceful in the silence, in knowing that nothing needed to be decided in that exact moment. But still the weight of everything hung softly between us. Not heavy, just present. I found a bench just off the trail near the water's edge, half shaded, half lit by sun filtering through the branches. I sat brushing away a few damp leaves, and Ethan joined me without a word. For a long minute we just sat there watching the ripples on the water. A duck glided past, calm and unconcerned, like the world outside didn't exist. Then he spoke. "I wasn't expecting this," he said quietly. "Coming here. Seeing you feeling all of this." "Neither was I," I replied, eyes still on the lake. "It's complicated." He nodded. "It is, but it also feels simple, doesn't it? In a strange way." I turned to him then, studying the earnest look on his face, the soft curve of his mouth, the way his brows knit slightly when he was trying to be careful with his words. "It feels honest," I said. "And that's what makes it complicated." He gave a small laugh, the kind that carries a trace of sadness. "I don't want to make your life harder. I just didn't want to leave without telling you how you made me feel." "And how is that?" I asked, though I already sensed the answer. "Seen," he said, "known. Like I've been talking to people for years but never really felt heard until now. That hit something deep in me. I'd spent most of my adult life being useful to others. A mother, a wife, a sister, a friend. But rarely had someone looked at me and asked who I was when all those roles were stripped away. Ethan wasn't asking anything from me. He wasn't pushing or suggesting a future or even crossing any lines. He was just being there. And something about that stirred a kind of gentle ache inside me. I used to think my life had already happened. I said slowly that I had my chance and what came after was just coasting, living quietly, being content with memories. He looked at me, quiet. "But now I don't know," I added. "Maybe I still have more of me left to live." He reached over then, not to take my hand, but just to rest his beside mine on the bench. Close but not quite touching. "You do," he said. I could feel the sun on my skin, the way the wind curled through my hair, and that simple nearness between us. My heart felt open in a way I hadn't allowed it to be in years. "I'm not sure where this goes," I whispered. "It doesn't have to go anywhere right now," he replied. "It can just be this, what we are, what we feel. We don't have to label it or explain it." And that was exactly what I needed to hear. We stayed on that bench for a while, speaking softly about our lives, the years he spent struggling to find his footing after college, the way I slowly rebuilt myself after the divorce. There were tears, small ones, hidden in laughter. There were long pauses where nothing needed to be said. And most of all, there was respect, deep, unshaken, mutual respect. Eventually, the sun began to dip lower, and the shadows stretched longer. We made our way back up the trail, neither of us in a hurry. When we reached my house, he turned to me at the door. "I should go," he said, voice low. I nodded. "I know." He looked at me for a long moment, not asking for anything, not demanding a thing, and then stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't charged. It was warm and full and steady, like an acknowledgement that something unspoken had happened between us, and that it mattered. When he pulled back, he smiled. "Thank you for letting me in, for listening. Thank you for seeing me," I replied. Then he walked away slowly down the path toward his car, hands in his pockets. I stood at the doorway long after he disappeared from sight. And in that silence I didn't feel conflicted or guilty or even confused. I felt human, alive. Maybe life doesn't always follow the rules we expect. Maybe connection finds us in the strangest places, even in the warmth of a kitchen, the softness of a shared glance, or the simple stillness of a park bench. That night I made myself another cup of tea. And this time when I stood in the kitchen I didn't feel alone. I felt remembered. I felt chosen. I felt awake. And I knew something had changed in me forever.